So once I understand how to enter data in an Excel worksheet, I really need to know how to manipulate the rows and the columns in the worksheet as well. So you'll notice that I have Excel open here to a worksheet that has a bunch of data, and as we look closely at the data, we can see that the data is kind of incomplete. So I start with the number 1 here in cell A1, but then I quickly go to 3, 4, and 5 in cells B1 through D1, and notice I follow the same pattern, only I'm numbering down the rows 2, 3, and 4. Everything else, once I get inside the table, appears to be numbered sequentially. So for example, 5, 6, and 7, 6, 7, 8, 7, 8, 9, 7, 8, 9, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7. It's as if I'm missing a row and missing a column in this set of data. Well, I can easily fix that. The first thing that I do is I highlight the row that's immediately below where I want to insert a row. Then I come up to the Home menu tab, and under the Insert menu item, I select Insert Sheet Rows. Similarly, to insert a column between column A and column B, I highlight column B because it's directly to the right of where I want to insert a column. And I come over here to the Insert icon, and I select Insert Columns. Now I could alternatively highlight and then right-click on a column and select Insert to insert a column, or do the same thing here to insert a row. And notice I have that option there to delete the row or delete a column as well. So now that I've got my column and my row inserted, I can complete the table. So I can add a 2 here to complete that part of the table, a 2 here, a 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 4, 5, and 6, and I've now completed my table. Of course, to get back where I started, I'm going to need to delete a row and delete a column. So in order to do that, I'll start with the column first this time. I highlight the column that I want to delete, and I can come back here to the delete icon and delete sheet columns. Or I could right click and select delete from the menu item, which is exactly what I'll do here when I delete the row, by highlighting the row that I want to delete, right click, and select delete. And now I'm back where I started with an incomplete table. Alternatively, I can just change the size of my columns. So for example here, I've got the phrase, learning Excel is funner than a root canal. Now of course that might be a debatable fact. If I look closely here at cell A1 though, I'll notice that I can see that there's more information in that cell than I'm currently displaying. And I can see that either by looking here at this menu bar right here, which we'll talk about in a later video, or if I just double click on the cell, I can see the entire contents of the cell. And notice that it overlaps the cell to the left, or to the right of it, because there's more information there than I'm currently displaying. So I want to resize that cell so that I can display all of the information that I'm storing there. To resize a cell, I do one of two things. I either manipulate my cursor here so that it shows up in the boundary between the two columns. Notice that my cursor changes to a line with two arrows going in either direction. This line is essentially the resize icon. Once I have the resize icon, I can click on it and I can move that particular column boundary so that it's larger or smaller. Also, a nice little trick here is once I have the resize icon, if I double click my mouse, it'll automatically resize that column to fit the contents of the largest cell in that column. And finally, I can just highlight the cell that I want to resize, come back to the Home tab, and under Format, I can change both the row height, or in this case I want to change the column width, and I can resize it to a specified amount. So in this case I want to resize it to 13 and click OK, and now I've specified the exact size of the column that I wanted to display. Now there are times that I don't want to display all of the information that's stored in my worksheet. There's an obvious way to get rid of information, and that would be to delete the information. Of course, once I delete that information, it's no longer part of my worksheet. Or I can just hide that information so that it's still in my worksheet, but it's not visible to the user. So for example, I may not want my students to have anything about root canals in their mind when they're thinking about learning Excel. I just want them to think about learning about Excel being fun. Now I still want to store the information about root canals in my workbook, but I don't want my students to see it. Now, as you might expect, the way to make that happen is to hide that information from the user. So to hide information from the user, I just highlight the column or the row, but in this case I'm going to hide a column that I want to hide. Right-click on that particular column, and notice I've got the option to hide that content, so I'll select that. And now that information is not viewable to the user. Now there's a little clue up here. If you look very closely, you can see a double line on the boundary between columns B and D. That tells the user that we're missing some information. Not only that, but you'll notice that column C is not even seen by the user, so skipping a column here would also give the user a clue that there's some information being hidden from them. So if they wanted to see the information that's being hidden, we just go ahead and highlight the boundary columns. So I'm including the cells that are hidden with the adjacent cells that are not hidden. Right-click on those particular selected cells and select Unhide. And now I'm viewing all of the information that was once hidden from the user. Now just like there are times that I want to hide information from the user, there's also times where I want to limit the amount of information that the user can see just because there's so much information in my worksheet. So for example, in this worksheet here, I've got stock price information about a number of companies. I've got at least 60 companies here in my data set. Let's see how many I have. I've got 100 companies in my data set. Not only that, but I've collected information from really dozens of days. So as I work through this, I've really got a large number of items that I'm dealing with. Now, I can't display all of those items at the same time on the screen because each of those individual items would be so small I wouldn't be able to see what I was working with. So as you've already seen, I'm able to scroll around and access the data, but I'm not able to see it all at the same time. Now that creates a problem for me as I get over here, say to column AE40. Notice that I've had to start renumbering or relettering my columns because I ran out of letters in the alphabet to accommodate the number of columns in my data set. Okay, so I'm in cell AE40 here, and I have the number 78. Now, if I were really familiar with the data, I would understand that that's a $78 stock price, but I also don't know at this point what company or what day that stock price was for. I've literally scrolled too far to the right and too far down to be able to see that information. So I have to scroll back over and up in order to know that that was for company 38 on January 18th. There's really a better way to be able to retain the information that I want to see on the screen, such as date and company number, while I scroll through the other data that I don't really care about remaining on the screen. In order to do that, I follow a process called freezing the panes of my worksheet. So essentially what I want to do is I want to freeze row 2 and column A so that they persist when I scroll through my worksheet, so then it's easy for me to see what each of those individual data items in the rest of the table refer to. So to do that, I highlight the cell directly below and directly to the right of where I want my panes frozen. I then come up here to freeze panes, and notice I have some options for freezing the top row and the first column automatically, or if I just select freeze panes, as I scroll through my worksheet now, that row and that column will persist so that I'm able to see the data headers for what I'm working with. So when I go back to cell AE40, I can easily see that that $78 stock price refers to company 38 on the 18th of January.